ways that one of the elements of time structuring is the ritual. Let's say I am in the apartment here. There are 7 other apartments apart from us. So I walk out, I see somebody, I say, hi, how are you? How are things with you? He says, hi, I'm great. I'm doing well. So how are you managing this? It's all right. So there is a polite exchange, which is very, very routine. That's something we do with anybody with whom we meet first. Hi, how are you? Greetings. There is exchange that happens for about few seconds or at best a minute. Now this is one of the elements of time structuring, which is called ritual. Now it is not that how much time we are spending on that we have to look at it. You may want to spend some time to, while we are discussing, to reflect on to what extent do I do ritual, to how many people do I do the ritual, how much time do I spend on the ritual part of it. Some of the common rituals that we go through in our daily lives is brushing our teeth is a ritual that we go through. Polite exchanges is a ritual, greetings is a ritual, routines, getting up in the morning and brushing our teeth is a ritual. Is coffee drink a ritual? We'll come to it in a moment. We will know whether it's a ritual or whether is it something else. So this is the first element of time structuring. The second time structuring is pastimes. Some of you may wonder, is pastime good? Is pastime bad? My request would be that instead of looking at whether it's good or not, let's understand what it is. To what extent am I doing it? To what extent should I do that? If I want to increase, how do I do it? If I want to decrease, how do I do it? My request would be that right through this, whenever any points are discussed, don't look at it, is this good or bad? Ask yourselves, where am I in terms of time being spent on these elements? Should I spend more or should I spend less? How do I spend more? How do I spend less? That's how it should be viewed at. So these are talking about very predictable part of it. So the moment we do the rituals, for example, I walk out, I meet my neighbor, I say, hi, how are you? So how are you managing the pandemic? Yeah, it's very fine. Now, the conversation has not stopped there. See, normally what happens in ritual, we say, okay, I'm going for a meeting. He'll say, no, okay, I'm also going out somewhere. The conversation would end at that ritual. Sometimes the conversation may proceed beyond the ritual. It could lead to pastimes. This is something I'm just taking an example with a neighbor. It could happen in our office environment. It could happen with our friends. It could happen with our family members sitting inside. So we are talking about general items. By and large, these are non-controversial topics. So typically being talked about, why is this, how is this pandemic not getting over? Why are shops being closed? People talk for about 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. So they like to spend their time. Pastimes means that I am spending my time in a non-controversial topic. Sometimes this could also be a foundation to have a deep conversation later on. It could be a foundation. May not be a foundation, it could be a foundation. Typically, stereotypically, we see the salespeople actually doing this a lot when they are waiting at the reception area. They talk to people around, they spend time and asking questions, chatting about it. It is not that only salespeople do that. Lot of us do that. What salespeople do that is probably visible. We do that in our life, in our daily routine, we do that. Pastimes being spent in terms of interactions. Also, when I'm waiting in the lounge in the airport or in the station, I sit there, I say hi, there is a smile. That smile or a hi is a ritual. As a courtesy, we extend it. So then we ask him, so where are you going? So he says one place, I say another place. So where are you from? So I am here from. So the conversation develops, and where do you work? What do you do? Where did you study? So suddenly you find that there is a commonality found out. It could be a native place, it could be a school that I studied, or it could be the organization that he's working or he worked before. Suddenly we spend a lot of time talking about it, and we realize that we spent about 30 minutes. Was it of any purpose, any use for anybody? No, but somewhere the connect happened. The two people exchange cards. They say it was great meeting. Let's catch up next time whenever you are in town, or give me a call if you're in town. Now, was there any productivity out of that? Did we generate any revenue out of that? No. It was beyond courtesies of hi and hello. Little more time was spent. Likewise, we do that at homes. We do it with our friends. We do it with our colleagues on a regular basis. Sometimes this is also said as the water cooler discussion. So when people go into having a water near the water cooler, people take a cup of coffee and chit chat for about 5-10 minutes about a TV episode which happened yesterday, or a football match they watched the day before yesterday, or about some event which happened 2 days back. So this is typically a time being spent on talking about non-controversial general stuff which connects both of them. Or it could happen also in a group, small group, when friends get together or colleagues get together before the meeting. There is time spent in general topics. Now, the first one we talked about is ritual. The second one is pastimes. There's a third one. This is the activity. This is where by default bulk of our times are spent. The important aspect of it is this is called an activity because it is linked to the goal that I have to achieve. It could be at home goal, or it could be a corporate goal, or it could be a personal goal. I am working towards that goal. Meetings that we have is a goal. Now, this presentation that I am making, that's an activity for me. So I'm making a presentation, so that's an activity. I'm sitting and preparing for this presentation, that's an activity. I'm calling somebody and asking for some inputs on this presentation, that is an activity that I'm doing that. We do that at home. Like, for example, I just want to go home and do some cooking part of it. That's an activity. Taking care of children, small children are there. I need to take care of them. I need to take care of them in terms of feeding. I need to ensure that they sleep. All those are also activities because it comes under the goal aspect of it, goal directed. In corporate world, definitely the goal is to be able to complete my KRAs or achieve the organization's vision. In terms of home, would be to ensure that the relationships are maintained, in terms of there is harmony. So there are a lot of goals, whether it's home, whether it's personal life, whether it's business life, whether it's a community life also. So sometimes you may wonder, is going to the temple, is it an activity? So it again depends on that. As we progress, you will know that there are two more. So in terms of three more, sorry, is it a ritual, or is it a pastime, or is it an activity? For example, going to the temple. Okay, every morning at 6:15, I have to go to the temple. I have to do 3 pradakshinas and come back home. What do? I don't know. I just go there and it's part of my job. I've been doing for 10 years. I just like to do that. Is that an activity, or is that a routine? So maybe it's a question to ask myself. Am I doing it as an activity, which means that I want to enrich myself in terms of spiritually? Then it becomes an activity. I'm just doing it because I want to do this every morning. My mother told me about 20 years back to do that. I'm doing that. Maybe it's a routine. Sometimes it can also become a pastime. I have to kill 20 minutes, 30 minutes of time. So I go for a walk, I look around, have a cup of coffee, visit the temple and come also. So it could become a pastime too. So coming back to it, drinking cup of coffee, sometimes we have a cup of coffee and we chit chat at home. Just like that, chatting up with people in the family. So is that a ritual, or is that a pastime? That's a question to be asked. There is no ground rule which says that if you drink coffee, now that is a ritual. If you drink coffee, it is a pastime. No, the same work that I do may be categorized in more than one, depending on with what perspective am I doing it? I talked to you about going to the temple. Now, brushing the teeth. I mean, typically brushing the teeth is a ritual. So you brush the teeth. Now, if I'm going to help my child brush the teeth, it could be an activity. Or I may spend that time to sit and wander around and think about something and watch television there while doing that. So is that a ritual? Ritual means that that's a routine which I have to do that every morning, which should take a particular amount of time. Am I doing it as a pastime? So those are the questions to be asked when you're looking at these elements of time structuring. So we looked at ritual, we looked at pastime, we looked at activities. Withdrawal. Remember when we talked about the entrepreneur that we may withdraw out of the meeting and go and sit in my cabin, or whilst I am in the meeting, that I may withdraw myself by not participating and wandering around in my mind. The meeting may go on. The famous quote I remember is from my college professors who used to tell us, you're all physically present but mentally absent. So likewise is the situation where there are, as an entrepreneur, as a manager, or as an employee, or as a family member, I am there physically, but I am not there mentally. I am wandering around. So that's a withdrawal. Withdrawal can also be stepping out and spending my time to myself. It could be meditation. It could be just a reflective time that I do that. All these also could be withdrawal. Now, withdrawal also can be that I am doing out of choice, or also that it could be an escape mechanism. So just keep that perspective in mind. Sometimes I may choose to withdraw from the meeting because I don't find it any useful for me, and out of sheer courtesy I have to sit there. So I'm there but I'm not there, so I may just withdraw. So sometimes I may withdraw to collect some thoughts and maybe I come back, or I may withdraw physically because I realize that sitting there is not adding value to me, not to somebody else. Let me get out, let me do something constructive or something useful, and then I can go back. So maybe I can use the withdrawal beneficially, or it may end up not being beneficial also. It's again how I deal with it. All these dealing with it can happen with a lot of awareness. It's important that I am mindful of it, and also, if possible, I am watchful of that. When I'm mindful and watchful, I will be able to realize that am I using it as an escape mechanism, or am I doing it with a particular purpose? Like choice to get up in the morning and do meditation, that's a withdrawal. I'm not going to be interacting with anybody. I'm just going to do some of the yogic exercises or some of the meditation exercises, or I may just be lost to myself for some time. That is withdrawal, but it could be very healthy, very beneficial. Many of the spiritual gurus withdraw themselves totally inside, spend some time and then come out of it, which is fine. That's again something that I am doing it with awareness. So these are the four we talked about it. So ritual, pastime, activities, and withdrawal. Now what is the fifth one? Now, games. Unknowingly we play games. Remember in the entrepreneur, we spoke about how conversation lead to some bit of unhappiness. There is a bad feeling that leaves there and people leave in a huff. Now, do people play game knowingly? No. If you know about it, you will not play the game because you realize that you're getting into the game and it's predominantly, no, not predominantly, sorry, I'll take back the word. It always happens unknowingly. The moment I'm aware of it, I will stop it. Now, what is the game? One of the examples I can give you is the drama triangle that we go through. I may play the role of, there are different types of games that people play. One of them is the drama triangle, which many of you may be aware of it. So it could be that I may play the role of a persecutor, or I may play the victim, or I play the rescuer. Typically, that's what commonly may happen, where I jump in to help somebody, to rescue, in a conversation that is going on, two of them are speaking about it, I just take a side and support somebody. That's a rescuing bit happens. Or I may take go against somebody to attack this person for having behaved that way. I may actually end up persecuting. Now, this rescuer persecution is not in the real life sense where I actually have an injury and somebody is rescuing me or protecting me. This is more in terms of psychological aspect of it. That's what we discussed about it here. So this is something that happens. Eventually, what happens is in a game, it leaves with a bad taste. Both of them go back with a bad taste. And also, please note that there is a pattern that happens when games are played. So there is a pattern, whether at home or whether it is society, community, office setup, in meetings, in friends get-togethers, or in any other events. Also, there is a pattern that would happen. I have to, the more I realize that how much time am I spending in that. So when you reflect back, how much time am I spending in that, when you reflect during the conversations in the day, that so many aspects of with so many people, I had certain bad feelings or negative experiences. So I know that somewhere I got caught into the game or I played a game. It is not that always that I get caught. I may also initiate a game unknowingly. Many of them say, no, I don't play a game. No, please, let's not be holier than thou. No, nobody. I don't play a game. Everybody else only plays the game. He may play a game or she may play a game. As long as I participate in it, I am also guilty of that. I must be aware of it. Now, why should I be aware of it? The more we are aware of it, the less time we will spend on games and more time we will spend on activities or in terms of that will be beneficial to us. Will it be possible for a situation where time spent in games is zero? Hypothetically, yes, it can be zero, hypothetically. Unless I am so highly evolved, like Maslow's needs of hierarchy, which talks about self-actualization, or an evolved soul person. Yes, somebody like that, he or she will not play. Very evolved souls, need not be only spiritually inclined. You may also find that in homes where people are very highly evolved, they don't play a game. They don't get it. They are aware that there is a game going on. They'll step out and say, no, please complete the conversation. I'll come back later. So they don't get into the game. So we have looked at 5. What is the last one? Intimacy. To go back to that games part of it, games sometimes is also called an attempt to bring in intimacy which fails. So it's also called as a pseudo intimacy. Very important one, intimacy, especially when we are looking at building relationships. Relationships is not necessarily only between couples or within family members. Relationships are between two people. And we talk about relationship, it is not just relationship means that you have to spend so much of time together to build a relationship. No, it can be with customers, it can be with colleagues, it can be with friends, it can be with family members, definitely. More importantly, I have to build intimacy at home. Because the more I build an intimacy at home, the easier it will be for me to build intimacy in the corporate setup. If I am not able to build intimacy at home, this is a hypothesis, this is not a theory I am making here. If I am comfortable building intimacy at home, I will be comfortable to build intimacy in the corporate setup. What does intimacy mean? Intimacy may have different meanings. The simplest meaning is that there is a close, comfortable, working relationship from a corporate perspective, and from a personal perspective, very close relationship. You remember, I mean, many people have told you, or you have told people, 3 o'clock in the morning, if you have a problem, you can give me a call. Why would somebody give you a call at 3 o'clock in the morning? Unless the person is very comfortable with that person, where close relationships has been built with that person. Unless that relationship has been built with that person, intimacy has been built, there is not going to be comfort in calling at 3 in the morning, leave alone calling at any time during the day. However, intimacy also makes it vulnerable. It will showcase my vulnerabilities. I must be aware of it. And when the other person values it, respects it, not misuses the vulnerabilities, that is when actually the intimacy happens, the close working relationship happens. Let me give you an anecdote which has appeared in the book Blink, which is written by Malcolm Gladwell uh, about 10-15 years back. He talks about a particular experience that they had looked at. So there was a lot of work that was done. So one of them was with insurance companies. They wanted to check out as to why some of the doctors are sued and why some of the doctors are not being sued. And in many cases, they found that the doctors being sued are the people who are specialists, and the doctors who are not being sued actually are not great specialists, are good doctors, above average doctors, but necessarily not at the league of the specialists that are there who are being sued. In deeper analysis, they found out that experts are more capable, they have high level of intelligence, they have been very successful in their surgeries. Why is that still that the specialists are being sued? Now, in that analysis, they found out that the time that is spent by the specialists with the patients prior to the surgery was 15 minutes, whereas the time being spent by the average doctors, average surgeons with their patients, with their clients was 18.3 minutes, which is just about little more than 3 minutes more than what is being spent by the specialist. Now, how does the 3 minutes make a difference? The patients have a lot of questions to ask before the surgery. So many of the patients are asking questions. The specialists probably complete it and say, enough, I've told you about it. Whereas these people took their extra time to say, I understand what you're going through. I can relate with that. Explaining how you can deal with that. Now, all that, where does it come from? Interaction with the doctor typically is an activity. You will actually find that in an interaction with the doctor, there is hardly any pastime being done. It's more of a ritual, jumps into an activity, and it closes. Now, during those moments, some of the doctors have taken time to spend with the patient to explain the repercussions, the prognosis, the diagnosis, what could be the outcome, how to deal with it. And many of them actually were asked, why aren't you suing this doctor although you had suffered? He says, no, he is a lovely doctor. He did not make a mistake. I love that particular doctor. So why does that love to the doctor come about it? The love to the doctor can come about only because the doctor made an attempt to be connected with that particular patient, which means build that intimate equation with that patient. Other than touching and holding the patient for testing out or for checking whatever, there is no physical connectivity at all. But yet with the words, with the listening, the doctor has built a close proximity with the patient to make the patient feel comfortable to walk out of it, not only go through the surgery. An unfortunate situation where it has failed or it did not go well, the patient has not sued this doctor. So that's a level of I wouldn't say benefit. That's the way patients have looked at it, not willing to even sue the doctor. Although they have been inconvenienced, they've gone through the pain, they've suffered. Whereas with the other set of doctors, they said, no, he didn't do his job well, I'm suing him straight. So that's in terms of intimacy. So we looked at ritual, pastime, activity, withdrawal, games, and intimacy.